India's link to the Middle East, Iran's port and India's role in building it. Report claims India's falling involvement. MEA clarifies talk on waivers with US. This is the port which is at the center of India-Iran relationship.
Donald Trump has announced a 25% tariff on countries that continue trading with Iran. He's also warned Tehran against the use of force and the illegal execution of protesters, repeatedly insisting that all options remain on the table. A phrase widely seen as a euphemism for a Venezuela-style campaign. Caught in the middle of this escalating standoff is India. While India no longer imports Iranian oil, it remains Iran's fifth largest trading partner. More critically, India's strategic interests are tied to Chabahar Port, its key maritime gateway to Afghanistan and Central Asia, now vulnerable to renewed US pressure on Tehran. Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX Explained. In May 2024, India signed a landmark long-term agreement to operate the Shahid Beheshti terminal, one of the two terminals of the Chabahar Port. Both countries signed a 10-year deal that would give India management control over a section of the crucial Chabahar Port. In fact, India has been developing part of the port in Iran as a way to transport goods to Central Asian countries, bypassing Pakistan. That historic deal was signed in the presence of an Indian delegation led by Union Shipping Minister Sarbananda Sonowal and Iran's Minister of Roads and Urban Development Mehrdad Bazarpash. India has committed approximately $120 million for port equipment and a $250 million credit line for infrastructure development. Now, in this context, listen into what Ministry of External Affairs said about the port and its situation.
Chabahar. On 28th October 2025, as you are aware, the US Department of Treasury had issued a letter outlining the guidance on the conditional sanctions waiver, which is valid till 26th April 2026. We remain engaged with the US side in working out this arrangement.
Here, Randir Jaiswal, the spokesperson of MEA, is speaking about the conditional sanctions waiver by the US till April 2026 on the Chabahar port. The US has a long-vested investment in Iran's access to the world and vice versa. The United States has imposed and tightened sanctions on Iran largely as part of a long-running effort to curb Tehran's nuclear ambitions and limit its influence in the region. Washington withdrew from the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, and reimposed wide-ranging economic penalties, arguing that Iran's nuclear program and related activities were not sufficiently constrained and posed a proliferation threat. In 2018, Iran claimed that the sanctions violated a 1955 bilateral treaty regulating trade and commerce between the two countries, and in August brought the case to the ICJ, seeking an emergency suspension. From 2018 onwards, under the Iran Freedom and Counter-Proliferation Act, the United States granted a sanctions waiver that allowed Indian and other foreign firms to operate at Chabahar without facing US penalties, in recognition of the port's potential contribution to Afghanistan's reconstruction and regional trade. But as US policy works, in September 2025, the US government under President Donald Trump's policy of maximum pressure on Tehran revoked the sanctions waiver that had shielded Chabahar from the broader sanctions regime. The US State Department stated that this decision was consistent with President Trump's maximum pressure policy to isolate the Iranian regime, warning that anyone operating at Chabahar or participating in activities described under IFCA could now be exposed to sanctions. But this wasn't the end of the story of Chabahar. Recognizing the strategic importance of Chabahar, both for India and for continued engagement on regional stability, New Delhi engaged in intensive diplomatic talks with Washington. As a result, in late 2025, the US granted India a temporary 6-month exemption from the sanctions, effectively a waiver delay, allowing Indian operations at Chabahar to continue until April 2026. This came after sustained negotiations and was confirmed by India's Ministry of External Affairs, which described it as a significant relief for its strategic connectivity plans. Now Chabahar is yet again in doldrums of sanctions amidst the Iran protests, and India once again finds itself in the eye of the storm, ruled by international relations. For understanding why Chabahar matters to India, let's take a look at its strategic importance. Chabahar Port is situated on the shores of the Gulf of Oman. Unlike most Iranian ports that lie inside the narrow Persian Gulf and depend on the Strait of Hormuz for access to open seas, Chabahar enjoys direct access to the Indian Ocean. This rare geographic advantage makes it a pivotal node in regional and transcontinental connectivity, linking the Middle East with South Asia, Central Asia and beyond. Geographically, Chabahar is uniquely placed. It sits only about 170 kilometers from Pakistan's Chabahar Port, a facility developed with Chinese investment under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and directly across the Arabian Sea from India's western coast. Its proximity to major international sea lanes and the Indian Ocean gives it importance not just as a commercial port, but as a conduit between continents. Here, geography intersects with global commerce, regional diplomacy, and national ambitions for India. Chabahar Port represents a long-cherished strategic objective, a sea-land bridge to landlocked regions of Afghanistan and Central Asia that avoids transit through hostile or unreliable territories. Historically, India's overland trade with these regions had to pass through Pakistan, a route fraught with political tensions, delays, and logistical challenges. Chabahar changes that equation. It offers a direct maritime route from India to South Iran, from which goods can be transported overland into Afghanistan and onwards to Central Asia. From a geopolitical standpoint, Chabahar also serves as a counterbalance to China's influence in the region, particularly China's investment in Gwadar under CPEC. By developing Chabahar, India not only enhances its access to new markets but also asserts a presence in the northern Arabian Sea that complements its broader Indo-Pacific strategy. For Iran, Chabahar Port is more than a piece of infrastructure. It's a linchpin in national and regional economic strategy. Located in one of Iran's least developed provinces, the port brings with it the promise of economic upliftment, jobs, and broader integration with global trade flows. While Bandar Abbas remains Iran's main commercial port, it is constrained by its position within the Persian Gulf. Chabahar's direct access to the Indian Ocean allows Tehran to bypass choke points and provides flexibility that strengthens its trade resilience. Coupled with proposed rail links such as the Chabahar-Zaidan line and potential extensions into Afghanistan and Central Asia, the port is central to Iran's ambition to become a regional transit hub. Iran and India both view the development of Chabahar as a long-term strategic partnership with India and other regional players. Tehran sees these ties not as transactional but as foundational to building economic linkages that cannot be easily undone by temporary geopolitical pressures. Iran's diplomatic statements emphasize that Chabahar is designed to support sustainable development and inclusive connectivity, investments in infrastructure that extend far beyond immediate political cycles. India's Chabahar dream falling through. Well, even though it's being reported that India's Chabahar dream is falling through and the $370 million investment going to waste, MEA has confirmed that it is in talks with the USA. As the April 2026 deadline approaches, Chabahar's future will test India's ability to balance its strategic partnership with Washington against its long-term regional ambitions. Ultimately, the port stands as a case study of how global power politics can reshape and restrict regional connectivity, even when all sides acknowledge its stabilizing potential.
India's link to the Middle East, Iran's port and India's role in building it. Report claims India's falling involvement. MEA clarifies talk on waivers with US. This is the port which is at the center of India-Iran relationship.